All right, so now we're going to welcome Emma Herman. Linda, just let me know. Emma Herman in LSW. I don't have her bio. LSW, MED, PhD, Community Education Specialist, and Adjunct Sociology Professor. And this is where things start getting kinky. We'll be talking about sex and intimacy for you and your partner. I'm already sweating right now. I think I need to pat myself. Hi, Emma. You're looking amazing.
Thank you. Thank
What
you.
are you doing?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Linda, for the opportunity, and thank you, Valerie, for all the hard work that you put into making this such a
So
beautiful event.
they told us you're bringing in some spice. Do we
Yes,
need to
I
get
am.
our bikinis right now or what?
Whatever makes you comfortable. I'm all about making everybody comfortable. So when we talk about sex, we have to just make it
Woo,
fun,
woo,
playful.
woo,
So
woo,
I'm
woo.
here for it.
Hey, ladies, let me see thumbs up in the comment section. Let's get everybody engaged right now. Wake up, because this is serious.
Yes.
This is a very important part of a relationship. We all need to, take the notes because our expert is here. She's here to give us all the juicy stuff. So, guys, take it away, Emma.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I am going to share my screen in a moment since I have a PowerPoint. But I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity and for your time. I'm really happy to be here. So let me just share my screen. Okay, the PowerPoint's coming up and that slideshow play from start. All right. So welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about sex and intimacy. I will introduce myself. I'm a sexuality education professional and an adjunct sociology professor. The sociology that I specifically teach is at my alma mater, Rosemont College, and focuses on marriage and family as well as sex roles. So as I mentioned, I'm a licensed social worker. I do hold a master's in social work as well as a master's of education with a focus in clinical sex therapy. Presently, I'm in the dissertation phase of pursuing my doctorate in sexology at Widener University. And the research that I am doing there in my doctoral work specifically focuses on female body image and the role that this plays for communication and sexuality within our relationships. I'm a passionate advocate of a concept we'll talk about today called body appreciation, which is really this thing that allows us to readily celebrate, love, appreciate, and respect our bodies so that we can find peace and fulfillment in our physical and intimate relationships with others. So a little quote just to start us off. I saw this, I came across it, and I thought it was perfect for this discussion. It's not beauty that keeps a relationship alive, it is attachment. Without attachment, a naked body is merely a lifeless sex toy. And this is said by a neuroscientist. So, even our neuroscientists are thinking about attachment and sex and how all of this comes together. So as I said, today we'll talk about intimacy, and we're going to talk about how that really begins with you as an individual, how our bodies changing plays a role in all of this, and then the journey of sex and dating and how that is really a lifelong discovery that we have to invest in. So when we say that intimacy begins with you, in the most simplified form, this is really about knowing yourself to your core, knowing all the layers of who you are. In a sense, we oftentimes get into relationships and we can sort of lose the individual that we were in the beginning of that relationship, which is an interesting thing to think about because when we get together with somebody, it's because they liked who you were and you liked who they were. So it was about the individuality and the desire to bring those individualities together. So despite being in a relationship or not being in a relationship, it's very important to continue to discover some form of solitude with yourself throughout your life, whether you're single, married, partnered, dating, whatever the case may be for you. You have to take that time to discover joys in life, new things that you want to try, your spirituality, your self-talk. Do you listen to how you talk to yourself when you look in the mirror, when you go throughout your day? Like, we really need to tune into self-awareness and have this insight, because if we don't become more familiar with ourselves, it makes it harder and harder to truly have insight to our person that we want to share with, right? The relationship we have with ourselves sets the tone and the foundation for any other relationship that we're going to experience. So this is where it begins. It begins with really tuning into yourself, building the relationship with yourself, and then extending that process to another person. Now, if you do have questions, I'm going to try to be mindful of the chat. It's hard to see with my screen full. I wonder if I can make it a little bit smaller, but if anyone wants to like come on verbally and just get me for a question, I'm all about making this a discussion. Sorry, how do we go back? I apologize, technical difficulties. So in our society, we focus on the physical aspect of intimacy so strongly. When we hear the word intimacy, we think about the body, we think about sex, right? That's the main component that we typically associate with intimacy. And certainly it is, and we're going to talk about it. Sex is a huge form of intimacy, and it is a very important part. But we limit our definition when we do that. So ultimately, we end up equating sex with intimacy. And many of us have probably had sexual experiences that didn't feel intimate at all. And that might not just be with, past sexual partners. That can even be within the context of a marriage or a partner that you do feel you have a good relationship with or a long-term monogamous relationship with. So why do we do that? Why do we so quick to jump to the physical aspect of intimacy? Well, obviously, this is the first thing we see when we look at somebody is the physique. We can reach out, we can touch them. This is what fuels our attraction and our arousal. It's a natural human process. Nothing wrong with it. But we have to try and put effort into conceptualizing intimacy beyond that. We have to look at the spiritual element, the emotional element, the mental element, the communication elements, how we want to foster what our relationship looks like in our community as well. All of these things go into building the intimacy, because as many of, if you were here for our couples earlier, I loved how they said, you have to put intimacy outside of the bedroom and romance outside of the bedroom to feel the intimacy in the bedroom, right? So when we do that, we have much more intimate sex. We have this much more strong connection within that context because we're also feeling appreciated outside of that, right? Sometimes foreplay starts long before the bedroom. So how do we go about redefining intimacy? We need to become a little bit more open-minded and realistic about what we perceive as being intimate, right? So we live in a society where we see movies, romance movies, we read romance novels, we watch reality TV shows, we have couple influencers on Instagram, and we really just look up to that, and we're like, oh, I want that, the fairy tale, the rose petals, the constant getaway trips, and it's like very, very over the top idea of romance. And we forget to realize that in the day-to-day, we can experience intimacy in these smaller, more realistic and tangible ways. So thinking about just leaving a note for your spouse or your loved one. Cooking is a hugely intimate thing that people overlook because we tend to do it every day. Think about that though. Like when you cook a meal for somebody, not only is it the time, the effort, maybe the thought of like what their tastes are that you put into that, but you're actually fueling their life force. You have in some way taken a hand in controlling the outcomes of their health, their energy, the vitamins and minerals that they have access to. That is deeply intimate if you really think about it. So there's so many ways that we can start to like look at intimacy and appreciate it at a level that our society tells us is not okay or is too little. And if we start to change that for ourselves, we're going to feel that we are intimate in more ways than we're not. So how do we grow and maintain that intimacy? Investing in those behaviors, communicating, and realizing that this is going to be something that takes work. It's not going to be pretty every day. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be something that we have to learn over and over and over again, especially if we're with somebody for years and years and years. And ultimately coming to the realization that love is not for you, it's for your partner. So many of us are familiar at this point with the 5 love languages, which is something that I love. It talks about words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, gift giving, and quality time. Those are the 5 love languages. And when we first learn about the love languages, it's very exciting because everybody likes to learn about themselves, right? So you take the quiz and you're like, oh, my top love language is words of affirmation and physical touch. And you get really excited about that because it's this new sense of knowing yourself, which is that beginning of the intimacy, right? The understanding of what makes you tick. Beautiful work. But now when we're with our partners, we need to not care so much about the love language we speak and be more tuned into developing a fluency in their love language. We shouldn't be so worried about ours because our inclination is to give love from the way that we speak it and receive it. We tend to think, well, if words of affirmation make me feel good, obviously it's going to be, the same deal for you. It's going to do for you what it does for me, but that could be the last one on their list. And so that's very hard to retrain your mind to love somebody from the aspect of what speaks to them versus what speaks to you, because we tend to get so caught up in what we associate the feelings of love to mean that we forget it's not about us. It's not about our definition. It's about yours. So even if it doesn't resonate with me, I got to put that work in to be fluent in your love language. And hopefully when you do that constant process of trying to be fluent in your partner's love language, you will receive the same thing back. So it'll be a continuous exchange of feeling each other's love language. And of course, like, all the love languages are things that are nice to have. Even if gift giving is the lowest on your list, that doesn't mean that you don't love receiving gifts from your partner. Of course, you can love all of the love languages, but your top 1 or 2 love languages are going to be the things that are just really the cherry on top of your day, or just going to make you feel extra appreciated and tuned into, because you're going to know that your partner listens to you and they hear what you want and they're invested in making that happen, even if it's not the way that makes them feel loved. So I think that's really important concept to get with intimacy, is that it's not just about you, it's about your partner. And if you focus on the needs of your partner, hopefully they will reciprocate as well. Just want to see if there's any questions before I move on to my next slide. Okay. So next, we're going to talk about our bodies and how they change, right? So we must continuously relearn our bodies. Our bodies are not going to be the same thing at age 15, age 25, 30, 60. It's always going to be a new body. And if we don't learn how to accept and forgive the way that our body changes, we literally create this hateful resistance that unplugs our ability to be intimate with others. Because true intimacy is about letting loose, being comfortable in the skin you're in, and saying, hey, if you like it, I love it. Because if we can't accept ourselves and not be so self-conscious, if we're so focused on that, we're not going to be able to connect with another person. Because guess who you're thinking about? Yourself. You're not thinking about your partner, you're thinking about yourself. So in a sense, it is a bit selfish. And I know it's not always from a place of intending to be selfish. It's from a place of not fully loving yourself or not fully knowing yourself. So this is a conscious effort we have to make. What are some of the things that lead our bodies to change? Aging, obviously. Weight loss and gain, this happens all the time. I think most of us have been experiencing it in quarantine. Childbirth and postpartum issues. Menopause, this is huge. I have talked to so many women about how menopause literally changes the vagina from the inside out, the hormones of our body. Like, that's a huge one. Stress, depression, anxiety, illness and surgeries, unexpected life events and accidents that we just had no control over. Trauma can literally take a physical toll on us, and our lifestyle, of course, especially now, many of us are not used to this working from home thing. So our lifestyle has changed. For me, I know that's a huge thing because I am always on the go. Normally, I'm always out and about in the community teaching, and I'm on my feet. So it's strange to have this slowed down pace, and that, can take a toll on your body. So how are we going to address these changes? How are we going to continue to love and accept ourselves throughout these changes? I love to think about body appreciation, right? So this is a concept that, if you've heard of body positivity, I know many of us have seen the Dove campaign with body positivity, and it's a bit broader than that, but that's a good starting point for many people who are, in our society, especially as women, we tend to struggle with body image because we're so bombarded by images of how we're supposed to look. And it's always changing. Every 5 years, it's a completely different body type. I mean, 10 years ago, it was to be this tiny little stick. Now it's this nice curvy figure. So it's going to change again. It's always going to change. And we cannot keep up with this game. We're not meant to. It's based on consumerism and getting you to buy those products and change yourself, because that fuels our economy in so many ways that you don't even realize, from clothes to makeup to surgeries. I mean, it's a huge industry. So body appreciation actually asks us not just to have a positive body image, which is what body positivity is about loving the skin you're in. Body appreciation says, what about the rest of my body? What about conceptualizing my body beyond what it looks like? Thinking about all the capacities that it has, all the beautiful things it allows me to do in life. I can run, dance, I can have sex, I can have an orgasm from my whole body, from my tips of my fingers to my toes, just to feel the sunshine on your face. Like, we forget that our body has so much more to it than the way that it looks. And of course, like, loving the way you look is an important part of appreciating your body. But when we allow ourselves to look at our body more holistically, we find that we tend to naturally fall into a mindset as well as a lifestyle and behaviors that actually allow us to feel better about the way the body looks as well, because it is an integral process, right? So if we're constantly beating ourselves up, we might stress eat, and then we gain weight, and then we hate the way we look even more. So all of this is connected. But it's really about trying to expand the view of the body and look at it and love it for much more. And when we fall in love with more parts of our body, we end up, ultimately being able to connect better with others because we're more accepting of ourselves, which allows us to believe that another person fully accepts us and to lean into that love and that intimacy. I think we just got a question. I just want to check on that. Are there any tips on maintaining intimacy specifically during pregnancy and postpartum? That's a very good question. Yeah, so that is a challenge because honestly, a lot of people don't feel their sexiest when they're pregnant, and certainly right after. I mean, doctors often even instruct, don't have sex for 6 weeks postpartum, or X amount of time, depending on how your childbirth went and stuff like that. So I am going to come back to this because I'm going to talk about ways that we connect intimately, but I think it comes down to that definition of, once again, broadening intimacy and also redefining what does sex mean, because so many of us really have a very limited view of sex. We just think it means penis in vagina and that's all it can be, right? But we know there's so many other ways to be sexually playful and even, have arousal and orgasm in other fashions. So I think we need to be willing to expand what we do sexually and what we do intimately, even if that's non-sexual, in order to maintain that spark, whether we're in pregnancy, postpartum, or something else is going on. So a lot of it's going to come down to that, as well as like letting yourself to kind of let loose and be in the mood despite what you're feeling about yourself, right? So again, stepping out of that self-consciousness of, I have this big belly, or my partner saw me throwing up from morning sickness, like letting go of that judgment of ourselves and being in the moment. That oftentimes fuels desire and fuels arousal because we're not thinking so much about it. Let's see if there was any other questions before I move forward. I think that was it. Okay. So what are some of the things we can do to discover body appreciation? Many people say, this is a new thing to me. I don't really know how to think about my body beyond what it looks like, because that's the only way I've cared about my body in all this time. We need to do physical activities or different physical things that really just let us let loose. So it can be dancing. Yoga is a huge one that there's even research supporting that it facilitates body appreciation, because if you go to like a real yoga retreat, I love yoga myself, and what you'll notice is when you're truly like around people who are committed and into yoga, they do not give a crap what they are doing. Like the facial expressions, the breathing sounds they're making, the belly being loose, like they don't care who's looking at them. They're not thinking about it. They're not thinking about what the next person to them looks like. They're not thinking about what they look like. They are letting loose, and they find that their bodies feel great, and they find that they develop flexibility and balance, and they come to appreciate these new capacities that their body has, which facilitates this process. So lots of physical activities that build strength, flexibility, or are just fun, where we let loose, like dancing. I know pole dancing is something that's on the rise that many women are starting to do to feel sexy. And it honestly, it goes beyond the sexy part, because it goes beyond all of that new capacities that your body is learning to do. And also just saying, you know what, I'm not going to be self-conscious. I'm just going to do this for me and have fun and try something new. And it can even be sensory things that we do for ourselves, like taking a warm bath, going to the spa, getting a massage, like really letting our bodies just let loose and not think about it so much. These are the things that help us to really facilitate body appreciation. Is giving that permission to be in an accepting state of your body and practicing that regularly. And ultimately, we're going to connect better with people because of that. So, how do we now take this into sex and dating, right? So, sex is across a lifespan. Aging doesn't end it. What do we mean by that? Everyone has sex. I have taught in all different facilities as a sexuality educator, prisons, colleges, senior centers. And let me tell you, those seniors are having sex. They are one of the most sexually active. They have some of the highest rates of sexually transmitted infections because of it, actually. So trust me when I say it does not end. I've had so many older women who are in their 80s, 70s, 80s, and up come to me saying, just because we're old doesn't mean we're cold. And I say, you know what? I love it. Keep doing your thing, because at the end of the day, this is a major form of human connection. This is a major way that we feel good about ourselves, right? And also feel intimate with a person. So we shouldn't think that there's a point in life where we just stop having sex, especially if it comes down to, well, I don't have the body that I used to, or this body doesn't work the way it used to. That doesn't mean it ends. That means we adapt to this body. We find flexibility with the body that we have so that we can continue to connect with others in this capacity. So how do we do that? Flexibility with our sexual expectations as well as our sexual reality, both for ourselves and of our partner. Being understanding that, things are going to change. It's not going to be the same way it was all the time. And that's okay. You can find new levels of pleasure. You can find a sense of connection despite that. It's so much broader than this one definition of sex that maybe we get so stuck in, because a lot of times with a monogamous partner, we develop a pattern. We have sex in the same place at the same time in the same position, and it's all the same. So as we start to change and that's no longer looking the same, it starts to feel like it's no longer working. And that's not the case. It just means we have a new body, a new self that we need to start to adjust things and work with that. And that flexibility is going to open up a world of sex that is so much more fulfilling that we don't even realize. And also being honest about when we need to do sexual reconnection, right? Some people are really against this concept of seeking out help or seeking out sex therapy, relationship therapy, because it's admitting that there's a problem. It's either admitting there's a problem in the relationship, admitting a problem with me, admitting there's a problem with my partner, and kind of almost publicizing it to a third party, right? So a lot of people don't want to go down that path, especially with a topic as sensitive as sex. And I totally get it. I can understand there's levels of shame around that. You may have even had traumatic or abusive experiences that shut you down from even wanting to have those conversations about sex. But sexual reconnection can be a necessary part of salvaging a relationship. And if it's not going to salvage a relationship, if a relationship is already okay, it can make the relationship that much more fulfilling. It can take that connection to a whole nother level. So we need to be able to assess when we have a point where we need to do sexual reconnection. And how do we do this? I like to call the 3 T's, right? We can use tools, techniques, and time. So what are tools? Tools are actual physical objects, people, places, or other resources that help to facilitate the sexual reconnection process. So this can be sex therapists, relationship therapists, marriage coaches. It could be a medical doctor who helps to diagnose at the physiological level some sort of sexual dysfunction or pain that you might be experiencing. It could be support groups for your marriage and family. It could be pastor or minister who's open-minded and willing to talk about these things. It could be actual use of sex toys or other things that we bring into the bedroom, like massage candles, the sex card games and dice, sexy lingerie and clothing. It could be really anything that's a physical object or resource that you use in the bedroom or to prepare for the bedroom. What are techniques? So this could be something that you do on a more minor level, like if you're into like reading up on stuff, or you want to try out something like Kama Sutra, or a new position that you want to try. Certainly those are techniques, but we can also have clinical techniques if we do pursue something like sex therapy. And I'm going to go over one that is a popular sex therapy technique that we use when a couple is experiencing issues with intimacy or feels that their sex life has gotten boring or just kind of like is in a pattern and they can't break out of it. We do often do a process called sensate focus. So sensate focus is assigned by a therapist, and it's kind of like these touching homework exercises that is given to the couple over a series of weeks. And we actually stop sex. We tell the couple, we're not going to have sex until we assign a date for sex to restart. And a lot of the couples are like, what do you mean you're going to stop sex? Like, they can't conceptualize that. And it's not that we're not going to touch each other at all, but we're going to redefine how touching looks and how sex looks. So a lot of times we'll start off with the first week will be something very basic. We tell the couple, hey, we want you to lay together for 30 minutes to an hour, 3 times in this week or 2 times in this week. And we want you to touch each other everywhere but in this section, right? We box off the middle section. So you can touch the limbs, you can touch the face, the hair, arms, legs, hands are cool, but nothing in the center. And couples often like really struggle with this at first because one, it might feel awkward. They may never have done this process with their partner. There can be lots of eye contact going on, and it might really feel very uncomfortable. But as they start to do it, they start to experience this level of intimacy and connection and communication, even if it's nonverbal, that as well as verbal sometimes, that it just feels a whole new spark. And they start to get excited for, well, what's going to come next? What's our homework next week? And the next week it can be, all right, we want you to spend X amount of time kissing, and you can kiss any parts of the body but here, right? And so eventually we work our way back up to sex. And what happens at that is, one, we've broken the pattern of what the sex typically looks like, right? Now we have a new definition. We understand there's more to the body than just the genitals. We can focus on other things. We might have more foreplay. We might be much more comfortable with our partner. We might, for the first time, feel like, you know what, I don't mind being completely butt naked in front of my partner, when usually you felt like, no, I gotta wear a big t-shirt to, to get on top, or whatever the case may be. You may feel completely just comfortable, let loose, and a wall has come down that you didn't even necessarily know was there. This can solve issues of delayed ejaculation, anorgasmic disorder in women, even feelings of pain that can occur in intercourse because people are so uncomfortable or uptight or not truly trusting and letting go with their partner, or being so self-conscious. Even this act of spectatoring during sex, which is something that when we kind of watch ourselves from an outside perspective, we might even look in the mirror and see like, how does this posture look? Or, you might just be thinking like, I don't want them to see my chin from this angle. Like, there might be so much that's going on in your head. You're not really in the sex. You're watching it. You're spectatoring it, right? And this is going to take us out of the experience. So that is a huge sex therapy technique that I think has been very successful for many couples. But of course, there's even more sex therapy techniques beyond that. So do not be opposed to sex therapy. Even if your sex life seems fulfilling, it can always be better. So don't think that going to sex therapy means you have a problem. It doesn't necessarily. And the third T is going to be time. This is what it sounds like. Making intentional time to set away for sex. Angel from our couple before, she made the point that I'm going to make now, which is scheduling sex. And a lot of people say, oh, that's so not sexy. Like, I don't want to do that. I want it to be spontaneous, and I want it to be like how it is in the movies or how it is in porn. And that's not realistic. As life goes on and we get into a groove of things or have children, other responsibilities, and especially like our go-getters. It seems like we've had a lot of go-getters say, you might be go-getting it out in the real world, but are you go-getting it on in the bedroom? Not necessarily. So you might have to build that into your planner and into your schedule. And it doesn't have to be unsexy or awkward. It's all about the energy you infuse into it, the excitement that you put forth that your partner can feed off of, right? So write that flirty text message. Leave a little note on the nightstand with a pair of underwear saying, hey, I'm going to wear this for you tomorrow night. Whatever it is that you want to do to plan the sex, it doesn't have to be a, hey, I'm booking you in tomorrow, 8 o'clock, you and me, bedroom. I mean, you could do it that way, but it's all about preference. It's all about what works for you and your partner. So sometimes just scheduling the time or just making sure that we make the time, you know, even if we don't set that exact day and time, we could just say, hey, on the weekends, we know that's what's going on. Kids are going to go to grandma's house or whatever the case may be to make this happen. But setting aside the time intentionally. I just want to check, see if there's any questions before I move into our last point. I think we're doing good. All right. Dating yourself. Oh, sorry. Did it again. Dating yourself and your lover all your life. So this brings us back to our first point of intimacy with ourselves. We have to continue to date ourselves. We have to continue to take time for solitude and continue to get to know the self that you will become each and every year, right? Each year of your life, you got to do things to discover what are your passions now? What are your interests now? Just like when you were a child, there might have been a food that you hated that now you absolutely love. Would you know that if you hadn't gone back and tried that food? No. So we got to still continue on this journey of getting to know ourselves and not losing our sense of self to the identity of the relationship, because that can really breed a lot of distance and resentment, even though it seems like it's breeding togetherness. It's really doing the opposite. So continuing to set time aside for you, for self-care, for self-discovery, even exploring your own body, like that could be sexually or non-sexually, right? That can be even just taking the time to say, like, what feels good? What makes me feel rested? What makes me feel healthy? What makes me, you know, feel more in tune with my body and be more aware of my body? You know, do you want to try a new hobby? All of that, because this allows us to realize that by being intentional with our own time and with what we want for ourselves, we have to also be intentional with our relationships. We have to see that relationships are something that take time, intention, nourishment, appreciation. And by practicing that with ourselves and investing that into ourselves, it becomes so much more intuitively natural to do it with our partner. So fuel your relationship with yourself in order to fuel your relationship with your partner. It's all connected. It all comes down to really these layers of knowing yourself, which allows you to know another person and truly appreciate them for what they are. That wraps up what I had to say. So if there's questions, I'm so happy to take questions at this time and answer anything that I can. What if you and your partner are on the same page when it comes to sex and intimacy? If you're on the same page when it comes to it, you're where you should be. I think that's always awesome, because it means that you have something that is truly working for you. There's a lot of couples that will go to are not on the same page. Okay. So if you're not on the same page, you're going to want to get specific about what you're not on the same page about. Is it the times that you're having sex, the frequency of when you're having sex, the type of sex that's going on? Like, you need to really nail down the factors that are making you not line up with sex so that you can kind of compromise and figure out how to make it work. That's really going to be the essential key to that, is one, nailing down what are our issues that are making the sex feel like there's friction here and it's not just flowing naturally and it's not really working out compatibility wise, so that we can address each of those things one at a time. Because if we just say, oh, we're not on the same page, I don't even want to have sex with you anymore, this is not going to improve anything. This is ultimately can be the downfall of a relationship for a lot of people. It could set the stage for infidelity to take place, or resentment, just disconnection in general. So we really need to verify and get down to the root of it, because a lot of times when people stop having sex, that might not be their main issue. It's a symptom of a larger issue. There's always something that might go into the mix that makes it the case that we're now disconnecting sexually. So is it the fact that I don't feel appreciated outside of sex? You never say thank you for the favors that I do for you. You seem to, you know, not acknowledge when I look good or anything like that. Like, we have to really discuss issues outside of the bedroom to get in tune with the issues in the bedroom, as well as the factors that go into the friction that's taking place sexually, because there could be so many things that are making the sex aspect incompatible. And a lot of times there's small solvable things that we can really knock out of the way in sex therapy in like 3 to 4 sessions. And sometimes it's just a matter of talking about it. What I have found is that sex therapy is largely sex education, because in our society, our sex education has done us such a disservice, because we've mostly had abstinence only, which doesn't prepare us for anything that we experience sexually. It pretty much takes a permission away from us making decisions about our body. So when we do more sex education that's comprehensive and hands-on, and really just like whatever you want to know about sex, and is very open-minded, we realize that we can solve things much easier because we're actually just talking about it. There's just communication there, and that gives permission. Sometimes people just feel like they don't have permission.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, I've learned so much. Like,
I'm glad to
yes,
hear that.
we talked about that earlier, setting a time, but not making it look like a rendezvous, like so serious, but actually all the touching and all that, that's something I've never really experienced, I would tell you, in my relationship, and I'll definitely want to take that into consideration. Thank you so much, Emma.
You're
So
welcome.
now we're moving on to our next. Oh, I think we're gonna watch that video first. We'll watch the slide that you
Sorry, I forgot my contact information. Yes, if you have interest in doing sexuality education sessions with me, this is my contact information, my email. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to discuss.